Welcome back, friends. Thanks for being here. We're going to try something a little different in this video. As you know, I am waiting for parts on the 8088 DOS PC build, waiting on the video card to show up, the video card parts to show up so I can start putting that one together. In the meantime, I went out and I got a 6-pack of Commodore 64s. None of these work, I'm sure. The goal here is to find enough parts to make a good one. Maybe enough parts out of the set here to make 2 good ones. Have some spare parts in inventory and see what we can do about getting these guys back together. Some of these are in pretty rough shape. You can see that the color is all over the map. I've also got a nice set of power supplies over here. More than likely I'm just going to test these guys out and make sure that they actually put out some voltage. I've already got a replacement modern power supply, link to that in the description below. But we're going to take a real quick look at these guys, see what we can do to get them into some better shape, actually clean them up, and turn them on and see what's going on. So stay tuned for that. Alright, this is literally a stack of bricks. Just for grins, I had to put them on a scale and weigh them. All told, these things are 20 pounds. It's kind of ridiculous. Kind of makes sense for what it is. If you've been inside one of these things, you know what I'm talking about. What I'm going to do is clear this out of the way. And like I said before, I'm not planning on using any of these, but just for grins I want to do a voltage test. Alright, I've got a little test station set up, and we've got the first power supply on the bench. It's plugged in, and I've got my multimeter out, and we're going to test it. So, let's see if I can find a good plug for you. As you were looking at your typical Commodore 64 power supply plug, you can see that there are 2 pins that are close together away from the dimple and 2 pins that are farther apart near the dimple. The 2 pins that are farther apart near the dimple are your AC line, and the 2 pins that are close together at the other side are your DC line. What typically fails in these guys is the voltage regulator on the 5-volt side gives up the ghost and can send over voltage through to your components, frying them out. So not a good day to be had there, which is why they recommend that you use either a C64 saver or a modern power supply that doesn't have those problems. I've got an alligator lead with an insulator boot on it plugged into one of the 9-volt leads, which is then plugged into my 9-volt test lead. I've got my multimeter here. You guys probably won't be able to see that on camera, but I'll read it out to you when I measure it. And I've got one of these helping hands devices that you use for building solder kits. So the 9-volt rail is putting out a pretty steady 10.4. So we'll write that down. 10.4, and then we'll switch this over to the other side, if there's a way to get that in there. Change over to DC, and we're reading 5.14. So this one's not terribly bad, not terribly out of spec. Well, let's grab another one and see what happens. Get that one out of the way. Putting a piece of masking tape on top of the power supply itself. Basically, it's a place to put some notes on what the power readings were. Switch that back to AC. Trying to touch a pin with a pin is always fun. This one's also reading 10.4, and I'm sure that'll actually come down a little bit when there's actually a real load on it. Switch this over to AC, over to DC. Check the DC side of the house. 5.13. I'm guessing the only better way to test these guys out would be to have a socket with some wire leads coming off of it. I just don't happen to have a socket with some wire leads coming off of it to plug into, so we're doing this the hard way. We're still on AC, we might as well stay on AC. 10.43. Didn't have a good connection on that one. Let's try it again. 5.12. After I get the testing done, we'll take a look at some of the serial numbers and specs and see if we can figure out when these were made and what batches they came through and that kind of stuff. This one has a complete row of pins inside. So this one more than likely has a replacement aftermarket connector on it. Alright, we know the bottom two are supposed to be AC. Let's see if we can do this just with the probes. 10.67. And then let's try the DC side. 5.26. This one's back to rounded pins. A little harder to get a real connection there. 10.75 came up just as my probe slipped. 10.75, good. .08. Looked like that one said 10.57, 10.57, and 5.14. So overall, I don't think any of these are all that bad. The problem is that they're kind of time bombs, and you don't really know when they'll go bad. So let's take a look at this one. This one's kind of bulged on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that on the camera all that well. It's got a sticker down here that says 2983, so maybe the 29th month of 1983. And the case actually has a crack in the bottom of it. This one here says 3-84. This one doesn't really appear to be as bulged as the other one does. These things are filled with an epoxy resin, so that bulge may or may not be any kind of issue. This one says 1 of 84 for use with Commodore computer, just in case you were wondering. This one is 0484. This was actually made in Taiwan. All the rest of them were made in Singapore. And this one has the pinout diagram on it and the voltage for each of the pins. 5 volts DC, 8.5 watts, pin 5, pin 6 and pin 7 are labeled 9 volts AC, 9 amps. .0584, this one's got the same pinout diagram on it. This one's also made in Taiwan. Part number 251053-01, if that means anything to any of you. So that was made 1 month after the one that we looked at just before it. And this one's 0185. This is the newest one. So it looks like I've got 3 that were made in Taiwan and 3 that were made in Singapore. And the Singapore ones are the older ones and the Taiwan manufactured ones are the newer ones. Alright, let's dig into one of the bread bins. Alright, all the power supplies are done. Went through all of those guys. That was pretty neat. What I have here is the modern replacement power supply from C64PSU.com. So far so good. Ordering was painless. I had a couple of different products on the website. What I ordered was the combination power supply for the C64 as well as for a 1541 disk drive. Cables in the box for that. Where's the other end of this guy? So this is the Commodore 64 power supply connector. It's got all of the pins on it. Little rocker switch here to turn it on and off. It looks like it should light up, but it doesn't. It's fine. China export sticker on it. And when you turn it on, there is a set of LEDs that light up inside. And when you turn it off, they go off. The feet on the bottom actually screw in place. I've unscrewed those to take a real quick look inside. And inside, it's a pretty straightforward design. It's a Meanwell power supply, which is what I expected to find in here, and looks pretty good. It's not drowned in epoxy, so that's a good thing. Being that it's a Meanwell power supply, I can probably get parts for this fairly easily. This is your 12 volt 1 amp output, and this one says probably something useful underneath of the stuck-on piece of whatever. This has 2x 9 volt output, 2x 5 volt output. So there you have it. That wraps up this one. If you like what you saw, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz for YouTube to make it show up in your feed. And of course, everybody's having YouTube feed problems, so if you ring the bell, it'll show up in the ring the bell page. Links for the power supply down below. The other thing that I have that we're looking up in future videos would be a Commodore 64 diagnostic cartridge. I'll have a link for this. This one actually has the C64 dead test cartridge in ROM, and then you push a button to go into bank 2 of the ROM, and it's got the C64 doctor. So we'll play around with that a little bit. I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.